Hey everyone, welcome to Surviving Business. We are back. I am so excited about the future of the show and all of you who have supported us over a period of time. You all can see my name. I'm Winston. I dig what we do here at Surviving Business. It's just a real blast of a show to do. David Wilson will be making a very grand entrance here in a few moments. So, for those of you who are out there, what we're going to do today is we're going to not only talk about businesses and from a Juneteenth perspective and celebrating that, but we're also going to talk about people that we love, that we really care for, businesses that we dig, and also we're going to talk about some external businesses that we know of. And so I wanted to kick off our conversation today talking about Juneteenth. Juneteenth is tomorrow, which is coincidentally Father's Day, and that's somewhat appropriate, even though it can be confusing for some of us. I had a chance recently to listen to a person talk about the history of Juneteenth, and quite frankly, I was fascinated by it. As old as I am, I did not know much about it until just a couple of years ago, and I thought it was pretty interesting. So, the first thing I want to share with everyone is just kind of you know, my view in regards to what do I think about this and how do I think about how we should be celebrating it. From I am in no way trying to say I'm a historical person around this. Um, However, I do know that it's been really, really important to many of us to see this. It started, from what I understand, listening to this, it actually started longer. I shouldn't say it. It's been known in the country more than I think it has been. And that's been really, really fascinating to me. So, this is the Juneteenth flag. I did not know until recently that there was a flag for Juneteenth. I thought that that was really fascinating. And I think the fact that since it was in Texas, so the general that went out to Texas to actually tell the slaves in Texas that they were free, which is the kickoff of Juneteenth, the official kickoff of Juneteenth. Uh, this flag looks pretty similar to a Texan flag or Texas, and I thought it was fascinating. I'm not a big fan of flags personally, but I just thought it was curious. I'm not a big flag. I don't have flags around me and all that, but I thought it was very interesting. So this, after the Civil War, there was some time that passed until this general went out to the slaves in Texas and told them they were free, and you can understand the jubilation associated with that. And so, hence Juneteenth, thank to our current president, went in and actually made this a law recently. And so I thought that last year he made it a fantastic law, and it was interesting because I was talking to some colleagues on this past Monday, and they did not know it was a official holiday. What do I thought that that was really, really interesting. Uh, it's going to take a while, but I am so thankful for us, and quite frankly, for that current president for signing that law in and saying, it is important. It's an important part of our history. So the gentleman I was talking to, he talked about all kinds of things associated with this, and one thing he did share with me, and uh, that I did not know, is that there is a person who kind of was spearheading Juneteenth for a period of time, and her name was Opal Lee. And so I'm going to see if I can share that with you. So she was born in 1926, and so it's not particularly long ago, but she's been an activist in order, and that's why she's called the grandmother of Juneteenth. I don't know you, Opal, but wherever you are, thank you so much for what you've done to get us going and for making sure that this is a recognized holiday. So today we're going to talk about surviving business and and one more piece on Juneteenth and how it is integrated and aligned to what we are doing here with surviving business is that when we got this when those that Texas general went out and shared that they were free, and then we have freedom, and it was recognized, at least officially recognized, not necessarily by the people who were doing it. Uh, the one thing I think about when I think about business and I think about the freedom, a lot of times you'll hear this comment: support black businesses, and it is the right thing for us to do. There is no doubt about it. We should be supporting our black business. But I think it's like another sentence that happens after that. There's another thing that doesn't get said after that, and that is the why. And the why is, oh well, because we keep the money in our community, and we help to grow our community, and that's a great thing as opposed to circulating it in other places. But I think there's another or sentence after that, and the other sentence is the why is because of freedom. Every time you go into a black business and you purchase their goods or service, it's like you're honoring the freedom that's happened on Juneteenth. And for us, it's not just about the money. It's not just even about the business itself. We are honoring that freedom. Freedom is hard to fight for. History is laced with people who fought and died for freedom, including our own people. And so a lot of times it's one thing to go up and just give a speech about how great it is and how we should make sure we're honoring people and make sure we got the freedom associated with us as people. But when you buy something at a black business, it's like you are telling them directly. You're telling us all directly that freedom is important to you, because freedom is hard to fight for, but it's easier to lose. That's for sure. Um, and so that to me is fascinating. And the other thing about Juneteenth that I did not know is that there were states that were recognizing this before the federal holiday. And so Texas, I love Texas for many reasons, and I do not like Texas for many other reasons. But they were the first state to recognize it as a holiday. So I thought that was really, really cool that they would do that. And from what I understand, that there's a couple of other states that have done this as well. And so freedom is such a key thing. So looks like we have a couple of guests here that are backstage. And so if any one of those and thank you for those who have donated to Kiana's Voice. So the reason why we're doing Surviving Business today and linking it to Juneteenth and Father's Day is that we've got a goal to raise $5,000 to give one person, a suite of technology to help them be successful. It's a very ambitious plan. I don't wake up to non-ambitious plans, but this one is very exciting. So for those of you who see it, you got the ways to donate. You can go to kianasvoice.org. You can see the Cash App there, and you can do that. And or if you are inclined, you can use the QR code, which is in the upper corner, and scan it and go right to our PayPal account and donate. And we've got a long way to go. We're close to 20 on our goal for raising that $5,000. So if you can assist us with that, we would really, really appreciate that. So it's one thing that I thought was interesting. I captured a quote here that I'll put into the crawler here in a minute. But success is the effort of it's a sum of small efforts replaced day in and day out. So in the session that we had earlier with Dap Paxton, so if you don't know Dap Paxton, you should. He is a phenomenal leader and very, very dope brother. We talked about the fact that the small things that and you see business owners doing every day, they lead up to the successful things that you see with the business. You just do. You see them really flourish. You'll see this all the time when people go, well, this guy is super rich or he's a millionaire, and you think that it's like an overnight thing and he just waved the wand. And next thing you know, that was the deal. And that's how he got there. It's not true. Every day, it's a small effort that you need to do. And we also talked about something interesting that I heard from a friend of mine, and I thought it was such an interesting way of linking math to success. And so if you think about how big the earth is, right, we've got almost 8 billion people on it. There is enough people for everybody from a business perspective. Because you, in the past, the way I grew up was you had to be like Coca-Cola. You had to make a business that everybody loved. Everybody wanted something. You had to be that kind of thing that was a global company. Otherwise than that, you didn't have a viable business. But the majority of business owners that exist in the world don't have that. Or don't, they're not Coca-Cola, but they have found a niche. And here's a simple math thing for everybody. So finding 10,000 people sounds like a big number. 10,000 people who love your product and or service, and you give value to them worth $100. They give you $100. You are a millionaire. Now that sounds like just a couple of quick steps, but inside of that, everyone, there's a lot of small steps to do that. Finding that 10,000 people is a struggle of my life. It might be the struggle of your life, is to find who are those people who really can dig what my product or service is. And it sounds simple, but here is the reality as a business owner. Pulling business people and people, us in general, away. Like if you're listening to my voice right now, there's a decent likelihood that there's an email that came to you or a phone call or a text or something. And so you say to yourself, I'm distracted. You got a lot of things. So how do you get your message, your product and service to cut through all of that so you can actually get them to share with you that $100? That is the struggle of our time. I wouldn't say it was easier back when I was younger. It was just different. Until now, you've got to find them and you've got to cut through a lot. The cool thing is that there's technology that assists us. I always talk about the technology as like one of those heroes through the pandemic. Because if it wasn't for technology, I might not be talking to you today. We may not have had this ability to understand that, yes, we can communicate partially through technology. It wouldn't exist. So how do you cut through? How do you cut through the chatter and the all of that exists out there? Having a plan, a marketing plan, is helpful. However, a plan is just a plan. A plan don't mean nothing if you can't figure out how to just take those steps towards it. The one piece I'll say about technology, the other piece I'll say is that as much as there's so much coming at us, there's so many ways for us to find our niche. There's so many great ways. So if you think about all the platforms that exist, the Discord and the Twitter spaces and all of those, there are ways to create communities that might dig your product and or service. So even when you do that, you've got to figure out, well, how do I get to them? So that's a little bit of an off rant there. I want to make sure that I shared a little bit about that. So talking about Juneteenth is it's pretty cool. I wish I would have known about this when I was younger, because I think we could have, I could have learned more. I wouldn't say it changed my life, but at least I would have some different insight. And when my own history is that I came to the United States as a baby, and when I came here, and where I was growing up initially in Brooklyn, there was nothing but small businesses around us, everywhere you could see. And all of those businesses in that side of Brooklyn that I was on were black. And from a lesser extent, there were a lot of people from Jamaica there at the same time. And I remember that saying to myself, like, that's the way to go. It seemed harder, but it seemed worth it. It's like, that's the way to go. I was so excited to go into these businesses. I remember them even as a 4 or 5 year old. You don't have much memories from those days, but I do remember it. And I grew up in a family that was really rooted in kind of a survival instinct. Maybe that's the reason why I have this, why we call it surviving business, is that in the survival instinct. And so if you think about the hierarchy of needs from Abraham Maslow, the one of the top bottom ones is shelter and food, and then it goes up from there. And so self-actualization is at the top of that. But my family came from a environment where we were sort of down towards the bottom needs, because we had the shelter, we had the food, but going up that that hierarchy was challenging. And so the self-actualization part, I didn't really know until I got older. It was all about survival. How much can we accumulate? How much can we keep? How much stuff that can we not use so much? And that includes money and material. And I remember growing up and saying, wow, that is contrary to what I see in those businesses in Brooklyn. But it didn't leave me. I remember just jokes. Friends of mine grew up, they got jokes about me selling them the comic books I drew in, whatever grade it was, 8th grade. And I wouldn't go to lunch because I think lunch was a waste of time. And so I would go there and I would be selling my comic books all throughout there and making a bunch of money. And I did. So it was like me clinking my creative part of my soul to this entrepreneurial bent that I had, even at a very young age. And I tell my son and people of his age group that when we came to Jamaica, we came and we survived because our parents didn't know much about anything else. It's like, get a job, and that's it. You get a job and life will be okay. But I tell them it's really on them to think about ways that they can flourish, not just in the business world, but in the community world. Here's a tricky thing that I've learned is that at one point, businesses were there to serve and help communities. They were linked to something called the common good. I read a book by Robert Reich of that same name. It's so I'm not saying businesses aren't there to serve the common good these days, but it seems like money, especially when you think about the big conglomerate type companies, money is the thing in the forefront. And then there's one of the worst economic terms I've ever heard in my life, trickle down economics. I remember growing up hearing that term. Even as a young person, I said to myself, that's what's a trickle? A trickle is a very small amount. That means you keep mostly everything you got, and you just trickling little bits and pieces downward. And I think it's one of the worst sayings, or the worst economic principles that can happen. Because if someone decides to close the trickle or to trickle just a little bit, then they keep all the stuff at the top. And what kind of sponge is trickling? So trickle down from what? So one of the worst economic terms I've ever heard. And so I think it's had a detrimental effect on a lot of people in the world. And it's creating a schism between us, people who are in the lower class, middle class, all the way up, because it's been said, and people like Bernie Sanders and others have said it. I don't know if this is true. Billionaires, they own, top 10 billionaires own most of the wealth of the country. And that seems opposite of what a flourishing business country should be like. I don't know if it should be that way. You go to other countries and the businesses seem to be there and serving their communities in a direct way. I'm not saying our business community doesn't do that. It just seems to be pockets and less of. When I was growing up, it went from like only a few television channels to this massive explosion of media back down to like 5 or 6 streaming channels. And so you think that you're watching a whole bunch of streaming channels that you have access to, but it's not. It's really a bunch of conglomerations. But the one thing I'll say about my family's focus when we came here was that survival thing, but it was also education. My parents didn't have any formal education beyond, regular school. They didn't go to anything beyond that. But the education that my brothers and sisters have had has transformed our lives into a another effect, helped us be able to help our parents as they've gotten older. If we didn't do that, then we may not have been there to help them. So education is a big piece. And someone will say that right now, education, forget that. I'm just going to go out there and do my Instagram stories and I'm going to be dope. And I'm going to make 1,000 and get 100,000 people. That's true for a fraction of everybody. It's true. There's always a fraction of everybody that does that. But for most of that, we need education because education is not about education per se. Education is about the awareness that it creates for all of us. It creates this kind of eye-opening thing, especially if you go into the college level and then you go into the graduate level and all of that. Your eyes start to open about the world and the amount of possibilities that exist for you in the world. Your awareness really expands. And so you say to yourself, man, this allows me to think about whether I should go into a job, or I should be an entrepreneur, or should I be an activist? There's a lot of people, I'll hear it all the time. Well, we need a bunch of specialized people who just do one thing and the other. And they may be right. But what I tell people of my sons and my nieces and my nephews that are coming up, I tell them that you have to keep your 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 mind open. The world is changing so fast. When I was growing up, none of this technology existed. Zero. There's no computers. If you want to buy a camera, it costs you a bunch of money. Then you have to take it to a little shop and they would have to develop the pictures for you. It was totally different than it is today. And so for the next generation, they have to keep their eyes aware of the future and what could that look like for them. So I talked a little bit about Juneteenth from that perspective, and I talked about our history from my family's history and why Juneteenth and surviving business is important to us. We have so many people in our family who are business owners, and one of which that we'll talk about here in a minute is my wonderful cousin who lives in Tennessee. I talked about her last year, and the reason why I want to talk about her again is that she is so she is so steadfast in what she does. She is not letting she does not let anything deter her. So there's a lot of business owners that you hear about and they say, oh well, I started it and it didn't work out. And this is relevant to me because I hear people all the time, they start a podcast or a TV show or business or nonprofit. And then a very short period of time after that, they stop or it just vanishes, because they say, well, I didn't get a bunch of likes. I didn't get a bunch of followers. And so it ain't that good. I don't think that's true. I don't think it's true. Like I said, there's 10,000 people for us. The hard part is the 10,000 people. So she has this business called Beachy Pal, where she takes natural ingredients and she sells them in different forms. And she even has a wonderful sea moss that I use because it helps with my multiple sclerosis. It helps me. It helps my shoulder a little bit because I need my shoulder because I got to type. I got to type a bunch of stuff. So it helps with that for sure. And the cool thing about her name is Michelle Stephanie, is that she learned the ingredients for Beachy Pal from my uncle who owned an unbelievably successful bakery, Jamaican bakery in Long Island, New York. And so he would make all of for those of you who are familiar with the Jamaican food types, you'd get things like beef patties and buns and a hard o bread and curry this and jerk that. He did all of that. And in the back of his bakery, a lot of people didn't know this, but he would grow his ingredients that he would put in his herbs and stuff that he would put into his food. And so he taught Michelle a lot about this, about how do you grow certain types of things. And so hence she puts it in this phenomenal ingredients in Beachy Bell. So she's got skincare stuff. I haven't tried that before, but I understand it is phenomenal. I do know for a fact though that that sea moss is fantastic. And so as you can tell, there is no denying that she is a black business. So she wants to make sure that you know that she is. And so here is Michelle right here. And so her comment is at Beachy Pal, we love crafting nature's finest elements that go into our holistic skincare and wellness products. We believe when we take care of the earth takes care of us. What a fantastic statement. We believe when we take care of the earth takes care of us. Man, isn't that so wonderful? Because this is a little bit of a Winston rant there for a second. Is that is that having this kind of focus or having this kind of thought about taking care of the environment goes back to what I was saying around the common good. Is that the common good is so critical for all of us that we are taking care of that. So such a wonderful thing. So I think we are ready. If David is on, let's see if David is with us. David, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's
What's up?
awesome. So for those of you out there, I was walking the people who've joined us today and who'll join us later, kind of my own view on Juneteenth and why it's so awesome that we've linked this section to Juneteenth. So I went through the history a little bit. History as I know it. I'm not a professor about Juneteenth, so I can't purport to act like I know all of it. But then I talked a little bit about our own history, David, from my perspective, and our roots, and a little bit about why education is such a key thing for us, and then some of the guidance that we want to share to our children. So this is a really great episode to do it at really around the same time, Juneteenth, Father's Day, linked at the same time. And I was talking about our dear family member who we talked about last year, Michelle Stephanie, who is still going. She is not letting anything deter her at all as far as going forward with this. So, David, I'm going to step back for a second and go back to the part about our own history and how that's helped us to prepare for surviving business and Juneteenth and some of those things there. Maybe you can give us your perspective on that.
Okay, so Juneteenth, right? It's very interesting to me when we think about Juneteenth because if we fast forward 20 years ago, well, or rewind, we wouldn't be fast forwarding, right? If we rewind 20 years ago, a lot of us didn't know what Juneteenth was. Not a lot of us, but a lot of us. A lot of people. Um, First time I heard about Juneteenth, I was talking to a friend of mine, Lawana Baker, not Anita Baker, but Lawana Baker. And she said something about Juneteenth, and I was like, Juneteenth, what is that? What are you talking about? She's like, you don't know what Juneteenth is? I said, no, I don't. Right. So I got a quick little history.
I know who Luana is. Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds right. Yeah. So,
so,
uh-huh.
so I got a quick little history about Juneteenth. And what I found from the history that I got, I was like, wow, so you mean we have this piece of history that definitely happened, and I probably did go over in one of my classes in college, history before 1865, history after 1865. Somewhere in there, it must have came up, but didn't resonate with me, right? It didn't like sit with me where I was like, oh my gosh, this is really a big deal. I mean, I did think it was a big deal, but I didn't think it was like a big deal. Like there was like a celebration and there was a day named Juneteenth behind it. Um, so so yeah, we move forward, and we get a national holiday. We get the national holiday, and I hear some people like, Juneteenth, they need to really do something for us, right? But every time that there's a piece of history that happened where specific events took place where people were either done wrong, um, wars happened, people died, um, or amazing things happen, wonderful things happen. Um, it it's important that if that thing is very important, that we all are able to sit back and take some time out of our day and to be able to actually reflect and think about it. Now, for Juneteenth, for this to be now a national holiday, that's big, and it's a really big win. There's a lot of people that have fought for this thing for over 40, 50 years. Um,
Yeah,
and
I was sharing that a lady named Opal Lee, who was in Texas, she was the main driver, and she's called the grandmother of Juneteenth, and
yeah,
because she did not deter, nothing deterred her. And the reason why I dig this is that this links to business owners so much.
yeah,
Like business owners, those people who, like I was telling these things about, people say I got to start in a business, I'm starting a podcast or TV show, and then like 4 months later, they're like, what happened to it? Just stop because they didn't get the results that they wanted. Opal Lee did not stop at
yeah.
all.
Uh,
She,
and that links back to like the struggle that African people have had across the globe, right? So it's not something that's, a lot of times we think in America is germane just to Americans, right? To African Americans, right? But we've been oppressed all across the globe. And Juneteenth is, a celebration to say like, okay, so there were these people that were still working
as slaves.
as slaves, right? They weren't sharecroppers. They were still working as slaves. They didn't know that they were free yet, right? And then somebody came by and told them that they were free.
Yeah,
Now,
that general that went to Galveston, Texas, who told him, and it was, I think, from what I understand, it was either a couple of years after slavery was actually, and the war was finished.
yeah,
When
yeah,
he
it was
went
several.
there. Yeah,
And I mean, just like you, I'm no big professor on this. I can't say hey, I'm a professor on it. But one of the things that I do know is that there are two things that happen in a moment that happened in the moment when people found out that they were free. Was like, wow, this is amazing. This is great. And then the second thing was, now what do I do?
yeah.
Right.
Mm.
And that part is the harder part, right? Because today you say, all right, so I'm just gonna go and get a job, right? I'll go and figure things out. I'll go and get some welfare stamps or whatever. I'll go on welfare and I'll be able to get some help. Then there was no infrastructure built out for that, right? And although they were free, they still were not going to be treated as equals by the public that still held all of the power, right? So, you know, as an educator, sometimes I have to sit back and have deep conversations with my students. And I have one student who spoke about like the Kanye statement where he's like, "Yeah, people chose to be slaves," and that's one of those things.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's one of those things where I'm like, they didn't necessarily choose. And then the student was like, "Well, they should have just fought. They should just fought back." It's like,
Did he go to any kind of history class?
yeah,
Did he ever hear the word Nat Turner? I mean, did he like just think?
yeah.
I
And
don't- Yes.
the thing is, like, there was Nat Turners. There were people who tried to run away. There were people when they ran
Harriet
away, they got
Harriet
caught.
Tubman's. I mean,
Harriet
God.
Tubman, Harriet Tubman, she got beat with a pan when she was young, and had bad vision for like her whole life, and like a messed up leg, right? And that was minor to what some people had to live with that attempted to escape these extraneous situations. And then the whole thing, like, why didn't they just fight back? I'm like, so today when we look at the population of the United States, African Americans make up 13%. When we look at you know when we look back to those days, 1865, we made up a much smaller population. Well, if we look at the percentages,
Right.
population. So, you look back and you think, oh, there were so many slaves. Why didn't they just fight back? So many enslaved Africans. Why didn't they didn't fight back? Because number one, they didn't have the numbers, right? So
And
maybe on a
it,
plantation there was
and it,
60, there
and
was
it did
60 to like 10.
they did fight back, but to your point, there wasn't enough percentage to do that.
Yeah,
I mean, there's insurrections all of the time. That was one of the things that those white slave owners feared the most
they
was
were.
insurrection. They just
Yeah,
did. They had the guns, they had whatever it was. I wanted to fast forward to something that you said that there was a few articles I was reading recently about how trauma stays within the womb of kids. And that's it was a kind of a clickbaity article, but once you went back down into it, that when the trauma that one experiences can actually translate into the DNA of their children, someone's children. And so if you have that kind of trauma that went on for hundreds of years, the trauma of that becomes part of our DNA, and sometimes in some kind of insidious ways that we don't recognize initially. So that's why we as Black people, we have to be down for each other. We have got to keep educating each other because DNA is hard to overcome, but it can be with the right mindset, with us focusing on how do we help each other, how do we grow. And David, the one comment I shared earlier is that a lot of times when we say support Black businesses for like surviving business in Juneteenth, we just say it because it circles in our community and in our in our in our environment. The one thing I was sharing, and I was juxtaposing this with Juneteenth and linking these two things, is that when you go to a Black business and you support them, you are not only just supporting their goods and services, but you are actually casting a ballot for the freedom that we got on Juneteenth.
yes.
You are honoring that thing that happened.
Hmm.
You sure you're getting the service, but that small business owner, we're trying to defeat the psyche that's been embedded in all of us. And so when you do that, you are doing that, and it's actually you're exemplifying what the United States is trying to be when you buy from a Black business. You are
Yeah.
actually doing what the United States says was the promise of it by doing that.
Yeah, I think that we have in our community, we'll sit back and pontificate, and there'll be the comedians, and there'll be the people who are trying to preach knowledge, and it's like, whoa, everybody else does it, right? You look at the Jews and they do it, and you look at Hispanic people and they buy from their people, and you know, why can't we buy from our people, right? And then we'll come up with the million and one excuses why we can. At the end of the day, the only excuse why you don't spend your money with your people is because you don't want to.
Yes.
There are tons and tons of um, opportunities, tons and tons of businesses that are out there. I have a lot of friends where when they want a service, a lot of times they look for that black service, right? They hit their network and they say, "Yeah, do you know any black carpenters? Do you know any black woodworkers, right? Do you know any black doctors that you would recommend, right?" So
Isn't
when
that
we
true?
think about the services that we're doing, so it has to be a thought process that we go through where we say, okay, I don't just want what's available to me or the easiest option all the time. Sometimes I need to make that actual step to say, Where is there someone that has dealt with similar things that I've dealt with, that has pulled themselves up from their bootstraps, or are trying to pull themselves up by their bootstraps to create a legacy for our people? And I say that because every black business that succeeds, every black business that started and attempted, is creating a legacy for our people, right? Because we look at economics, and people say, money doesn't run the world. I don't know who says it, but I'm just gonna say
That's,
somebody's out there saying it, right?
that
But
is
everything
so
that happens,
true.
huh?
I said that is not accurate.
Yeah, it's not accurate, because everything in the world is driven by economics. You
Yeah, you
vote
made
for a
me.
president based
Yeah,
on economics.
yeah, you made me think about something. So many of us have become aware of Black Wall Street that existed 100 years ago, and the Tulsa race massacre that occurred, where that entire community of business owners were eliminated. A good friend of mine has a play based on this called Deep Greenwood that she does in Tulsa, Oklahoma every year to kind of commiserate or commemorate that. And it is so I almost say that there is a war of a kind that we've got to continue to do. And I don't mean like a physical war, right? Because to your point earlier, we don't have the amount of people. And quite frankly, regardless of what they say, how many guns we got, we ain't got nowhere near the amount of guns compared to everybody else. However, we do have each other. And this Black Wall Street that existed in 100 years ago, 1921, I see people trying to do it today. I think there's an actual app by one of these celebrities that does that kind of thing, where it talks about, hey, we should be able to connect with each other on this. And it is so needed, and it is so hard. To your point, the psyche trauma thing I was talking about earlier. I think there's almost like a self-loathing that exists sometimes within some people, where they go, well, I don't want to deal with a black business for one reason or the other.
Mhm.
And it is a psyche thing that's in our brain, and we don't even know. It's a
Yeah.
subconscious thing wired in our DNA. We just go, oh, no, no, they're gonna rip us off. They're gonna rip us off. And that's not true. The whole story is about the Nigerian princes or whatever. Nigerians are in my opinion, some of the best business people on the planet Earth. Like, yo, they
They
do
are.
not stop until they get that business going. They
Yep.
like they
Focus.
they are going to find a way to make this business successful. They are not going to like let anything hold them back. And that's it versus
And,
the things that we say about it.
and as you talk about Black Wall Street, and I think Black Wall Street has become, heavily popularized, right? The story, we know it, right? But I remember when I was young and I first heard of Black Wall Street, I always thought that we were talking about the Black Star Line, right? We were talking
The
about
black what? The
the
black what?
Black Star Line, like what Marcus Garvey had created in
Oh, oh,
Harlem,
oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
which was also, how can I put it? They found a way to take it down, right? They found a way to take it down and take the power from it, right? So if we know about these two stories, there are so many more of them that exist across the country, right? So many upstart black business communities that started, that some way were defeated. There are a lot of people out there that say segregation, part of the reason why integration was kind of allowed was because of the strength that the black communities were starting to have,
Yes.
right? Because if we got black doctors, we got black lawyers, we got our own businesses, we got our own printing houses, we got our own newspapers, we have our own pharmacies, we have everything, right? At some point, we become self-reliant, right? So if we allow for us to integrate, and then our black doctors move to white neighborhoods, and our black lawyers move to a bigger house in a white neighborhood, all of a sudden we have a different story that's happening, right? And we have a way that all of a sudden we have these options and other places to spend our money rather than keeping our money with us, right? So the ghetto becomes the ghetto, and the ghetto becomes who couldn't get out, right? And they build these big projects and these big buildings in the 70s and say, hey, let's throw everybody in there that ain't got a whole lot of money so that they have housing. We'll call it a project. And it's not that they only did it for blacks, because white people also moved into those same project buildings, right? But in New York City, I think it's where you see the biggest discrepancy, right? So you look at NYCHA housing, and you see NYCHA housing in one area where people's skin is one color and how they're treated, and you see another area and you see their skin color and you see how they're treated, and you're like, there is seriously a big discrepancy. There's a big difference. And it's normally not that the people who have skin color that's brown have the positive the positive reaction that the positive side of the scope. So yeah, I just say that to say it's not that Juneteenth means that we've arrived. Juneteenth and having this holiday, what it is saying is that we're here, we've been here for a long time, and we've been making strides for a long time. And the work that we do should never allow for us to forget the past and forget the treatment that happened in the past. So we have all of these theories that are coming out now, and all these people that want to whitewash the history of this country, and they want to get rid of the idea that there was slavery, right? They want to get rid of the idea.
Doesn't that piss you off? Like, they're like, oh yeah, well, why don't we just get rid of whatever they call it, the critical race theory? That is not a theory. They're just talking about the history of the United States of America.
Yeah,
it's just a history.
Yes.
And it's so weird. I was saying to someone recently that I didn't know as much as I should know about Black history. And I think this person was on TV. And when they said it, it just was the same thing for me until Roots came out. Then all of a sudden, oh, that happened to us. Well, you know what I'm talking about. Roots was like this thing. Like, at least every Black person I know watched Roots all the time when it came out.
I mean, it was a long series.
It
but yeah, it was serious. The Roots was the first time where America got to see how horrible slavery was, right? That was like, and that's the 70s, 80s.
Yeah, the 70s, and even that was a regular TV show. So it can only show you so much on a regular TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And it was horrible. And quite frankly, that psyche thing I was mentioning just didn't affect us. Mm-hmm. It affects everybody. It affects white people too. There's this reason when this is just my personal opinion, that every time a white person hears the word equality or inclusion and all that, some of them, not every white person, they say, well, the pie is getting smaller. Like, my little slice of the whatever is getting smaller, as opposed to understanding that if you do that in a way where you integrate all of humanity in it, you grow the pie versus slicing the pie. And that linked to a personal has been affected, quite frankly. Or at least not all of them, but some of them has been affected by this for real.
It has. I can't remember the name of the group, but there's this whole group of white men and this whole theory that white men have, where it's this whole thing like, yeah, people are coming and they're trying to take their pie, right? And
they said that they're afraid that people are going to replace us, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yep. And the whole idea is, dude, why do you think that is yours and that you are the only one that should have a part of that, right? What do you it's this idea that they feel Oh, so because uh, people are trying to right the wrongs of the past, and they say, I didn't do what happened in the past. So why should I be penalized? You're not being penalized. There's
Yeah,
no penalty. There's no penalty. There's no penalty. It's not soccer. It's not a penalty kick that's happening, right? All that's happening is that other people are getting some opportunities,
that's right.
right? The opportunity that someone gets, okay, it takes away an opportunity that you could have. But does that mean that there are no more opportunities for you? Um, and I think a huge part of it, we always talk about, how can people get to understand what others understand? How do you get past the ignorance, right? Because a lot of times statements that people have about other people that are different than them come from a little bit of just not understanding what that other person is going through. Um, for a white man that's lived in America, and I hear this from especially from a lot of white guys that I know, where like for instance they're married to a sister, right, or they're dating a sister, and it'd be like they're the ones that like I can never understand what it is like to be a black man, but
Mm.
I understand that you guys have to deal with a lot of things that I never have to deal with. And you hear
Yeah.
from the rabbit's mouth there, right?
Yeah,
You know,
thank God for black women. Black women are the strongest, my opinion, the strongest group of people on the planet Earth.
definitely,
They've
definitely.
had to they've had to do so much. Their men have been at war, their men have done all kinds of things, and they've had to keep the foundation of our community. They just have. Black
Yeah.
people, quite frankly, are some of the most resilient people in the history of mankind, in my opinion. There have been people who've gone through stuff that have been atrocious. Well, we're talking about hundreds, maybe a few thousands versus the millions of people in our community that have been affected over time. So
Oh
every
yeah.
time, every time I see a black woman of any, whether they're young, old, I just honor them because even if they're 5 years old, like your daughter, I know that they're going to be the rock solid part of our world.
And
I just
and
know
I
it.
would say even to take it to another level, when we look back at when we look at business today, black women are the rock stars.
Yes, for sure. And college and business, they are definitely pushing everything, and not just pushing us as black people. They're pushing everybody.
Everybody,
Everybody.
everybody.
I wanted to share something here, and let me see if I can find it. And and I think I talked to you about this. And a lot of times we talk about just what's going on here in the United States. But I found this young lady, and I think I saw it in a story somewhere. And I was saying to myself, why is this young lady's story not something that everybody in the world knows about? And this was a young lady who's doing something really phenomenal in Africa, and specifically in Kenya. So she's doing this thing where she's taking plastic waste, and there's tons of it all over the planet Earth, and
Mhm.
she is taking it, and she has found a way to make this in a material that creates a brick that is harder than concrete. It doesn't deteriorate like concrete, and she's using it to build homes in Kenya for people who don't have homes in Kenya.
How awesome is that?
Isn't that fantastic? I'm saying to
It's,
myself, why is this like not on every news story like all of the time
you
about
know
what this young lady's doing?
you know why? Because someone hasn't found a way to take her idea and capitalize off of it, and then make a whole lot of money and pay her nothing.
No, that sounds so sad but true. This young lady, if you're out there, let us know because you should have a patent for this, and no one should steal this from you
Yeah.
because this earth is generating tons and tons of plastic. Then plastic, as we all know, is made from a fossil fuel like oil and that kind of thing. It came from dinosaurs and it don't degrade for thousands of years. So
Yeah.
anytime you take a plastic bottle, that thing is going to be around for a long period of time.
And it's creating waste. Recycling doesn't work.
No, because who
Right.
knows what they're just putting in spots. They're not doing what this lady's doing. Who she's doing real recycling because she's
Yeah.
using it in another, making something that we all need. We need houses everywhere on the planet.
Always gonna need houses, right?
There's 7 billion people here, and we all need houses.
And if we don't have to use bricks in order to get houses, which means that we don't have to, uh, power up these huge diggers
Yeah, and
to
and the
break.
boundaries that you make bricks out of, she is using something that already exists, plastic that came from the earth, and using it to support her community. That's why, man, if we could talk about this lady every single time that we have an annual event like this, I won't stop
Now you shouldn't.
because this woman is transforming the earth,
Mhm. And,
quite
and,
frankly.
and what she doing, and this is a great example of is ingenuity, right? And I'm not gonna say that other people don't have ingenuity because they do. Everyone's creative. Everyone, every person is born with this part of them that allows for them to think of big and grand ideas and to figure out ways to achieve them. But what I will say about our people, and since it's Juneteenth, we celebrate our people on this, on this weekend and on this day. Um, we've done it a lot of times where there is nothing. Like her creation there, that's coming from you know barely having anything to create an innovative solution that can transform the world. You know,
Yes, she knows that people in her country of Kenya, they need houses. So she said, "We ain't got enough bricks, but we got a whole lot of these plastics sitting around all over the
Mhm.
place." Man, is that is so one. Every time I hear it, I like almost get somewhat emotional because
And no, I don't want to cut you off, but for the entrepreneurs out there, the lesson here is you have a big idea. Big ideas become innovative products, become innovative solutions, right? The big idea here, I'm sure when she said this plastic maybe can, be turned into a brick. Or even when she was at the beginning, maybe something happened by accident and she's like, "Oh shoot, this plastic became really hard when I did this thing. Maybe we can use this for something else." And she told somebody, and somebody either they said, "Yeah, that's a great idea," or they said, "That'll never work. Come on, that
yeah,
can't work because number one, if you put the plastic together, the plastic you're not going to be able to combine enough plastic for it to have the same consistency of a brick. And plastic just can never be as strong as a brick is,
yeah.
right?
So she shared in this thing that this Kenya creates a 2,400 tons of plastic of waste every day, and 20% of it, which is plastic. And so as she's looked at this, she says waste is generated by the city. Only 45% of it, back to your point about recycling, is recycled. Only 45%. And so she was 29 years old when she started. It's 29. Anybody who's out there listening, just if you're 29 or 89, being innovative is definitely an important piece. And so she got educated and she started to make this thing. I, I'm saying to myself, if you don't have a trademark or a patent for this, which I think she did, the video that I saw of this, I think she does have a patent for it. But I'm always interested as to why no one else has come by and said, "Hey, let's give you $1 billion for this idea."
And not to mention, patent laws are weird, right? I guess
Country to
this is
country, yeah, it is.
country to country, right? So it's like, yeah, so you got a patent here, but you need to make sure that if she's in Kenya, that she also has a patent in the U.S. filed with U.S. government, filed with this. There should be an international patent thing, right? If they did, then China just couldn't steal all of these ideas and do whatever the hell you wanted to do. But
I'm so
that's
curious about this because maybe it's just me, everyone. I'm becoming more and more acutely aware of our environment as I get older and about all of the things that we do. I am not an environmentalist because I got as much crap as everybody else, but there's got to be a way to figure out how do we help ourselves. Because one of the things that was in Michelle's thing about the earth helping us, she had this comment on her about page, is that if you use materials to help the earth, then the earth will help us. That seems such a relevant thing. That's going back to my comment about black women. is that they are thinking about not just themselves, but they're thinking about the community, they're thinking about the planet, they're thinking about the environment. The people who first found out about the Flint issue, where Flint was getting poisoned by it, was black women, where they were getting that poisoned water. Or I forget how long ago it was, but it seems like it was such a long time ago.
It wasn't.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. It wasn't that long, but it seems like wow, they've probably been poisoned for the longest.
Hmm.
And it's horrible. So
And and the things like that. That's a leading trauma, right? So if you have lead in your water, you've been giving lead to your children at these young ages, and we know that leads to deficiencies in learning, and then your kid goes to school with this deficiency in learning. You have to be in a classroom with students. Maybe some of the students aren't getting this bad water, but then your kid is like acting up. You as a parent, you don't know why your kid's acting up. You think that it's because he's just a bad seed, but one this is non-business related. There are no bad children, right? There are children that learn bad behaviors, right, and that need to be corrected at some point. But there's no such thing as some kid that will. There's We don't know of a Damien, right? The child of Satan that's really been born, right? So if you got a kid out there, even if you think that your kid may be bad, don't worry about it. He's not. She's not bad. What you do need to do is just think about, how can you fix that, right? Maybe that's a business that you can create once you fix your kid, and you no longer think that they're bad, right?
yeah, it is unbelievably pervasive, and I've seen many things about how our communities are the first destination for waste dumps or industrial things, and those things have an effect on our. To your point, it's real. They know for a fact it does have an effect on our brain
Mm-hmm.
and our ability to learn, because there's intervals where we are the best at learning, where our brain gets hard coded, right?
Mm-hmm.
So six, I forget what it was, six pubescence, and then when we're a young adult.
Yeah.
And so if we're getting all of these things that are affecting our ability to learn, then we could be in that's another variable that we don't even think about sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's why when I had this thing where we're talking about why surviving business and why this is so important, education, I don't necessarily mean just college education, but I mean just education, period, is so important for all of us. There's not a day that goes by for me personally where I don't break out some time to actually learn something new.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I see this a lot amongst people who are, getting older, where they kind of stop. Say, well, I don't need to learn anything else. I'm good. I'm great at whatever I do. I don't need to learn a thing else. That's not true for going forward.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with one of my friend's sons, and happened to see him last night. He told me that he's going to college. He's going to be going to Morgan HBCU, and he said that he wants to study business and psychology. I said, "Why do you want to do business?" He's like, "Cause I want to do advertising, um, and I want to be able to advertise." And I said, "That's great." I was like, "So think about this. Go to school for business is great, but if you want to advertise, focus on the advertising. Learn the craft.
Yes.
When you learn the craft, then you can create the business. You'll learn business when you create your business. Don't worry about learning the business now. Worry about the craft." And and then I told him, I said, I work at a CTE high school now, which is a career and technical education high school. A lot of our kids, they come out with the ability to go straight into working as an electrician. They can go straight and work for the MTA, which is, if you guys aren't in New York, that's the subway station, the company that runs the subways, buses in New York City. They can go straight to becoming a mechanic. So we got different programs that are available where these kids don't necessarily have to go and get a college. They go into vocational schools. They come out with trades and they make really really great money. But above them coming out and making really great money as as a high school graduate, or maybe going to vocational for 2 years and then start with $70,000 and don't really pay a lot for the education. Above that, they have a trade, right? And they have a trade where they can go and they can create a business where people will pay them for their services, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's always going to need a contractor. You're always going to need a plumber. You're always going to need, if you live anywhere in the South, you're going to need an HVAC guy, right? These
You know,
trades relate into you creating a business. And, I'm not trying to get people away from going to college. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that a lot of times what we get focused on is like, yeah, I want to. The idea is to have a business, and I say this because this is one of the struggles that I have and that I've always had. It's like the idea is to have a business and to start up a business, right? But then the question is, what's the business, right? I have tons of skills and tons of abilities. It's like, yeah, well, what do I really want to do, right? What do I want to do forever, right?
yeah,
What's the skill and service that I want to sell?
there's this book that I read many years ago called "Do What You Are,"
Mm-hmm.
and so for a lot of people, especially when they're younger, they don't know what they are, right? They don't know there's this big thing about purpose and calling and all of that. I think you just have to think about what is it that you love, what is the thing that you wish to love, what is the thing that gives you the most joy and value, because you have to think about doing the thing that you are, first, and growing and learning every day. So even in those vocational things, they are not what they were 30 years ago. You have to continue to learn new skills. You have to probably interact with computers more than you did 35 years ago. You have to figure out how do you juxtapose new learning. Those some of those roles have like yearly or
Yeah.
periodic certifications that you have to go through. You have to be able to keep learning in those roles. You just can't say, "Oh yeah, I got it. I've learned. I'm done. I'm finished." That's why I personally am a proponent of people learning as much as you can, especially if you're young and you don't have a vocation. Maybe college is a good way to open your eyes
Mm-hmm.
to see what that was. I know it was good. It was for me. It opened me up to lots of opportunities. I think I have a pretty decent career. And if it wasn't for college, I might not have been so aware of what was going on or what I could do. And did it take me a while to figure the whole thing out? Yes. It wasn't like a thing where I was like, oh, yeah, I'm 21 years old. Thank goodness for all of those who has figured it out at that point. But many of us haven't. Many of us continue to learn. That's why learning is so unbelievably important.
It's complete. So exactly what you said, right? So what we find in a lot of our neighborhoods are situations where kids come from families that may not really know a lot about different career opportunities, right? So your kid may like to do something, but you don't even know how to get them exposed to that thing that they like, right? What does that really equate to in the real world, right? Their love of video games, because they like a video game, does that mean that they need to become a video game programmer or, create video games? Maybe not. Maybe there's something else about video games that they can do, right? There are tons of different, they can open up a store, they can do different things. What you're saying is you have to continue to learn, right?
Yeah.
And you got to put yourself in situations where you can continue to learn, right? So you're a business owner. You've been open for 15 years. Your business is doing okay. Can it do better? Yes.
Or
Will you?
been around for 15 years, then this pandemic happens,
Yeah.
and you don't think to yourself, my gosh, how am I going to handle with this? What other channel that I have to figure out to get goods or services to my customers? Some
Mm-hmm.
did. Some did. They were very resilient, and all of a sudden people were like, well, just buy your stuff all online and we change our website or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But some did not.
Something.
Some was like, oh no, I don't. And that's why and to my dismay, there's lots of businesses that didn't make it. I
Yeah.
do believe, however, in 2022 and 23, there's going to be there's going to be an unbelievable boom of business owners that exist. Part of that is driven by Generation Z and the millennials that they are going to be in the workforce and they're going to be like, yo, I don't want to be down with a corporate job. I already know how to get paid. I'm using this new technology to figure out stuff. And if they have some bit of education, then they can say, let me drive that, let me do that. I know for a fact 2023, 24, there's going to be a lot of businesses open. I was sharing this earlier before you arrived about the 11 million jobs that are not filled. On some level, it's not that 11 million people ain't working. It's just that they ain't doing that stuff anymore. They
Yep.
don't want to work for 7.25 an hour, the same daggone minimum wage for the last 30 something years. They don't want to do that. Say, well, if I'm working for 7.25, I can find out other ways to get paid. An hour is an hour.
Yep.
7.25 per hour times my multiple of my rent and extra. That's illogical for me to work in a place like that. That doesn't make sense for me to do that. So let me figure out another way to support my family and my life versus going and filling your ticker on this 11 million job gap so I could be working doing something that can't do what I need to do for me and mine.
And I mean, the pay issue, the job opening issue, it filters into a lot of different industries. Small businesses are heavily hit by it. Um, Shoot, the deli by my job, they can't they can't keep a sandwich guy. The sandwich guy is like, there's too many orders coming in. He'll quit. You be like, you can't get a sandwich for a week. Um, and a lot of it equates back to pay for the services that you provide, the skills that you have, um, and then some of it is like, yeah, just the dirty work that no one wants to do. Um, and it's a funny country, right? Because we have 11 million openings, we have tons of people in Mexico that are waiting to try and come over here because all they want to do is work and create a better life for their families, and they would readily fill those job openings at the 725 that
It would.
natural born citizens may not want to, right? So we have a situation where it's like, yeah, there's this fight, right? That happens. I kind of got involved in this conversation, and sometimes when I get emotional, well, not emotional, but I get revved up. Um, I can control a conversation, but when we talk about the minimum wage thing, and I think that I don't have the popular view that a lot of our people have. We're like, yeah, we just need to raise the minimum wage, um, because I just feel like there are other economic impacts that happen when you force a raise of minimum wage, and generally the primary impact is that the people that had a little bit of skill, we're doing all right. If I was making $12 an hour, and the guy that started was making $7 an hour, I'm kind of doing all right for myself. I feel like I've done something. I've put myself in a better situation. My money is going a little bit further. But then when you move everybody up to $12, the company ain't gonna say, well, since you were making 12 and now he's making 7, we need to give you a proportionate raise to keep you on that level up above. It don't move like that. So the guy that's making 12 is now making 12, and now the guy that's making 7 is making 12, and the kid that comes from that's going to high school that comes to get a part-time job, he's making 12, and this guy is like, hey, my $12 ain't really going that far now because everybody's charging me a little bit more for this. I mean, shoot, pretty soon we won't be able to get a gallon of gas for $12. But
You touched a nerve there with some people.
yeah, exactly. But the reality of the situation is that the idea of a minimum wage, even when the minimum wage was initially set, the minimum wage was initially set because there were just like horrible practices that were happening out there where people weren't getting paid anything for their work, right? So they said we got to create this bottom level that we at least got it, that employers at least have to pay, right? So that people can have some sustenance or whatever. Today, our workforce is a lot more, how can I put it, diverse. right? You got talents that go like all across the board. And then you also have companies that have mixed needs, right? So if you have people that are rich that make tons of money, a minimum wage increase. Yeah, if I make 400 grand and you increase the minimum wage from $7 to $15, I don't really see an impact. But even if you're at the when you come in, you're even at the $40,000 range, and you're pushing, you're pushing for your folks that need more money. Like they need more money at the bottom, but them getting more money at the bottom, and this is more of a thing of capitalism. This isn't a thing of Davism, right? This isn't like, yo, I created this and I'm saying that this is just how it works. If you're at that $40,000 range and they bring these other people up from wherever they were, and now they're making like 21,000, you're now closer to minimum wage.
Yeah, 40,000. Yeah.
Yes, and your 40,000 no longer puts you like as a powerful, like, you went to college and you did whatever. There are people that come out with doctorates. I would hate to be that person that gets a doctorate and you got to settle for $35,000 a year. But I've seen posts.
It happens,
right?
And it's a circular kind of system when I think about it. Because if people don't make enough money, then they can't support those businesses that exist, or there is a big push to push the businesses to cut corners and or to steal. There are things that happen when you are so. I was reading a story about pilots who are making like 20 something $1,000 a year for like these cheap airlines. And I'm saying, so just tell me what those airlines are. So I never fly them.
You don't want the $20,000
I ain't trying to fly with no pilot that's making 25 grand a year. And then they were talking about how exhausted they were because they had to work a lot in order to get, and they don't get paid until the door closes. The clock doesn't start. And I was just like, oh gosh, how are we living in society like that? And
I mean,
it pushes economically. People are like, yo, where can I get a cheap pair of clothes? Where can I do this? How can I steal? It's a cyclical effect on everybody when you think about it. And I understand why the businesses say this, because my P&L says I got to be at this point. But then on the converse side of that, they go, well, nobody's buying my stuff. Well, if they ain't got no money, they can't buy stuff. They can't do that. And so it's I love the fact that we live in a global world, but when that stuff gets disrupted on any level at any piece, it has massive impacts. And then our small Black business owners are kind of caught in the middle there because they're like, yo, I'm here, I'm trying to support my community, and I have to make my goods or services proportional to what I need for the business to survive. But how am I going to get that funds? Where do I get it from? And that's the biggest challenge that a lot of us have to deal with.
And a lot of times it's not only for the business to survive. Sometimes it's also for the business owner to survive, right? So I have this conversation a lot of times with with our Black-owned businesses, where there's this idea, and I won't say it's an idea. I'll say that there's this kind of standard that a lot of our owners have set because they kind of understand that if someone is going to pay a price for a good or service from someone else at this rate, why won't they pay that same price to me, right? And when pricing this good or service that they're providing, they price it where they believe that it should fall. Now, one thing that I have noticed is that, and I'm not trying to throw shade at anyone, but I have seen that a lot of times our businesses cater to a luxurious style, right? Where it's like, yeah, you got to have money if you want to have this, right? And if I wanted to push to see something, and it's not always right. Starbury, he came out with the $15 sneakers, right? He figured out how to broker this deal with the maker, They created it right under this company from China or whatever, and he had his $15 sneakers. So it's not always, but in a lot of instances, we don't think to be the low cost provider. Like our strategy isn't to say like, all right, how can I create a product that can move more product so that I don't have to pay, so that I don't have to charge as much, right? A lot of times they say, well, I don't want to work that hard. Well, not that I don't want to work that hard. I don't want to say anyone's lazy, but but a lot of times they say, why should I have to put in all of this extra work in order to do this, right? But we look at the biggest company, one of the biggest companies, well, actually two of the biggest companies that exist, Amazon and Walmart. They're all predicated off of offering the best prices that are available, right? Amazon does not become Amazon today if you can't go on there and you can find something on Amazon for half the price that you could have found it if you'd have went in the Best Buy, right? Walmart does not be it's not Walmart, it's not Wally World if all of a sudden you go in there and their cut rate price is being cut by even Target, right? If I can get it for $2 cheaper from Target, I'm gonna go to Target, right?
Yeah.
So there are different models. There are different business models, and I would just like to say, us as black businesses, sometimes we have to think: am I operating at a rate where people can afford it, right? If I can't operate at that rate, how can I make it more affordable, or how can I make my product more enticing so that the customer really feels like they are getting a value for the dollars that they spend? You
Yeah,
know.
I shared earlier at the beginning when we were chatting that every business owner out there, what you need is 10,000 people, 10,000 followers or customers or clients over a period of time. And if you find a way to make sure that your value is so compelling that they are willing to give you $100, you're a millionaire. Now, the tricky part is finding the 10,000 people. And that
Mhm.
is the unbelievable struggle of many of us. And quite frankly, to your point, that there's this battle between us and businesses in regards to how much is a thing worth. That's why I always think that you got to give more than what you think you have to give in order to make it compelling. So if you've got say you have a great pair of sneakers or something, or you have a sneaker shop, when somebody comes in there, you have got to give so much value to the intangibles, the environment, your customer service, your return policy, your actual things, membership, all of these things you have to think about to make that experience so compelling that someone says, "So I got to go back there.
Yep.
I got to get the same thing we deal with restaurants. You've
Mhm.
got to make that experience. You can't make it cut through." I wanted to share, David, this bank, and I'm sure you might have heard of this bank, um, kind of like pushed out there by, I don't know if he's an owner or he's part of it, but Killer
Mhm.
Mike, the rap artist, he's very
Mhm.
very popular here in Atlanta,
Yep.
and he's got this bank called this bank here called Greenwood. It's a good name because it links back to the Tulsa massacre thing.
Yep.
um, and they are working on really creating a bank. This is a little bit of trivia for a lot of people that I heard, that at one point there used to be hundreds and hundreds of minority owned financial institutions in the country. Now uh, there's about 80, and that 80 includes women owned, Latin owned, and black owned. And if you go down to black owned, it's like 15 or 16 in the whole country.
Mhm.
And so I think this is such a great idea to create a bank that's run by us and that's supported by us. I think it's a fantastic thing that he's doing.
So quick Killer Mike plug, right? Um, so I don't remember the year, but I do remember a trip that we took to Tower Records in Atlanta,
I remember Tower Records.
where I got a Killer Mike CD. Didn't know who this guy was, But this was the day of CDs where you saw somebody, you said this looks kind of interesting, and the price point was $6.99, and I said I'm getting this.
We had to explain in our previous session what a CD is for people who have never heard of a CD before.
A CD is a compact disc. I can go and grab one so that you can.
And it had music and files on it that you would actually use for different things.
Exactly.
So there's some
So
people who don't know what that is. So yeah.
exactly. So I got that CD for $6.99. Now $6.99 was a serious bargain in Tower Records, because Tower Records tend to be $16.99 for a CD. So I got that, and I got a couple of other CDs that were on sale. It was a new release, and I never heard a guy listen to. I said, "Man, this guy is great. This guy is like, he could be like the next Big or something." Um, but fast forward, that's all I have to say about Killer Mike. But
He's
I
a
had a
great actor.
huh? Oh no,
Activist.
huge activist, still a great rapper. You know, he has that series that he did. I can't remember what network it was on. If it was like Hulu or something.
It was on Netflix, and he went to different businesses, and he had this one episode where he had a bunch of gang members on it, and they, from the different gang factions here
Mhm.
in Atlanta, and he actually put them together, and they opened up their own business selling like juices and food products and stuff like that. And I was like, now that brother is great that he can get them gang members together and they could work together like that. That
Yeah,
was
that's awesome. That's awesome, because a lot of times gangbangers don't really want to listen to you, especially when you talk about not gangbanging. Um,
yeah.
but
He has credibility. That's one of the things we think about with a business. Your business, you have to make sure your credibility above almost all things stays intact.
yeah,
You've got to make sure that your brand is you first, your product second. That you've got to make sure that that has no flaws within it. If you talk to a customer and a customer needs help, you've got to be on it. You got to help them with that. You've got to make sure that your brand is, and that we were talking about this earlier, especially when it comes to like social media posts. People will have posts. This is my business. My business is great. This is what I need. And then I'll have some really derogatory, defamating, really incendiary type of social media posts at the same time.
yeah.
Or they're taking off their clothes or whatever it might be at the same time. And they got a business on the other side. I was like, it gives your brand a short shelf life by being that way. It's going to be,
Yeah, I had a colleague that I went to grad school with, and for MBA, and one of his big things was always like, "I'm gonna start up a bank. You need $250,000 in capital to start up a bank. That's all you need. Once you got $250,000, you can get a bank, and you can get FDIC insured, and you can run your bank." And it always stuck with me. And I still want to see when he opens up his bank one day. Kurt, you're gonna do it. I believe in you. He is actually a perennial entrepreneur. He's opened more businesses than I can name or even try to count. Uh,
all the
and, I,
best.
and I believe he still does.
Yeah, all the best to him because we need that.
Yeah.
Because you were just talking about an example earlier where we had businesses in our community that did everything, and one of the key components was that is a financial institution
Yep.
that can help with us growing as a community. And I just really hope him the best because we need that kind of focus. We need that kind of institution in our world. We just do. Um, so there was another one that I wanted to share here, specifically around here in Atlanta. It's a pretty well known place, and it's been really recognized. It was even recognized recognized in some articles in Wall Street, and everyone has heard of WeWork, right? The WeWork places, and you can go in and do things at WeWork. There's a one here run by a gentleman named Ryan Wilson called the Gathering Spot, and I've been there many times. It's such a phenomenal place, um, and he's now opened up locations in Los Angeles, Washington, and I think New York is on the docket after that. So it's like a WeWork. You go in there, but it's black people doing what we do there. I've been there for so many cool events. I had some celebrities that would come there and they would talk about different things that they're involved in. The food there, I knew the guy who was the food chef or whatever. It's a phenomenal environment for us, for us as black people, that we go in there, and these are business owners and entrepreneurs in this place working and collecting and networking with each other. What a phenomenal thing. So if Ryan Wilson hears this now, or a year from now, I want to wish you all the best to keep doing what you're doing. I think that is great. So for those of you who can see that, we're just sharing a little bit about the actual site itself. What a
Yeah, I just want to add that, what he's doing is phenomenal. I know I've heard stories of, you having meetings down there with Rhonda, and, y'all building on stuff. And, we have some similar stuff like that up here. I can't remember the actual name of the spot, but there's this young gentleman. He has a spot down on Flatbush, and it's like close to Prospect Park. I went to one event that he had over there.
So you see, this is the places that they have the actual building locations, but they now have like technology connections where people connect differently with on technological meetings and stuff. So they've got Chicago, Detroit, Houston, New York. That's the connected cities part of it.
Mm.
Um, and I think this is so awesome, and that we have it. I've been there, and I just love this place. It's fantastic. So Ryan, all the best to you. If you have one of these in your area, please go out and support him, like for real, cause it's freedom, not just money. When you go into a place, you are thanking him for our freedom to keep going that way. So that is an awesome place that we're highlighting today. So, did you have any other businesses that you wanted to talk about, Dave, that you wanted to share with us?
Um, you know, I have a whole docket, but I think I'm gonna save them for a future episode that we do. Some of them, because hopefully we'll be able to have some guests this year. And I'm gonna make mine to be able to bring on some surprise guests. Um, I think your mic went off.
I think that will be awesome because we got lots of people who've reached out to us saying, "Hey, I want to get down. I want to be a guest on the show. I want to talk about what I'm up to." And I think that's a great way for us to kind of take this wonderful show that we've got here and keep making sure that people know about it. There's one
Yeah.
last business I want to share, is that last year, if I recall, we shared a Jamaican restaurant that was in New York. And so this one here is in Atlanta. The lady who runs it, her name is Maggie. Her story is so amazing. She is so phenomenal. I don't know if this.
Hi, this is Marguerite, your kitchen artist from the Marguerite Jerk Bistro, located in the B building of the Beacon. Come on down and enjoy my low and slow cooking oxtail. You will lick your finger. Not to mention my smoked macaroni and cheese, my jerk chicken. Just come on in and enjoy the authenticity of the Jamaican flavor. This is home away from home. You will not miss your kitchen when you come to Marguerite Jerk Bistro.
Well, based on that, I feel like I gotta go get something to eat. So, that is an awesome video, and that's awesome what she's doing. And
Well, since you mentioned that, we can't have food without dessert. So shout out to my man Mel. I just put the link in there. Shout out to my man Mel who makes Mel's magnificent cheesecakes. I actually just ran into one of my friends from college, and I hadn't seen her. Not to say my age, but I haven't seen her in probably close to 20 years. Well, where we really had to we really had some time to sit down and chat. And she mentioned to her kid that when we were in college, we were eating Mel's magnificent cheesecakes, and I was like, "Was I eating this cheesecakes?" I just know I gave him the blender to make the cheesecakes, and he was always selling these cheesecakes, and everybody wanted these cheesecakes. And I'm like, yo, he never let me have any, right? So shout out to Mel. His cheesecakes are now we featured him last year, and the big update is that he's kind of ironed out how he can deliver those cheesecakes to you anywhere in the continental U.S. So he does have delivery all across the U.S.
That's fantastic. I put his website up there for everyone. Please go out and support him because his cheesecake, as David said, are fantastic. And he is a brother who's persevering. He is not stopping. He's been doing, David just said he's been doing it for a long time. That's what business is all about, everybody.
I saw that he posted recently that a young lady that lives in Queens just Googled one best cheesecake in Queens, and he popped up. And then she ordered from him, and she ordered this Oreo cheesecake, and her comment back was, "You got the best Oreo cheesecake I've ever had in my life," and I've had a lot of them. So his battle is now to make sure that he keeps that title.
Yeah, and he's found going back to the 10,000. He got one person on lock, and that's what it takes as a business owner. You got to keep them happy. You got to keep those individuals in love with you. And that's the biggest challenge that we all face as business owners. Once we have those clients or customers, how do we keep them happy all of the time? One last little comment about Marguerite's is that she is so, I'm very thankful to her because I'm actually going to do a reading of a first act of a play that I've written in her little outside venue right next to her, her shop there. So it's going to be fun. That's going to be in August, on August 20th. More to come on that. So I'm very excited about that piece there. So to me, that's kind of cool because she's helping to support what I'm doing as a creative. And at the same time, I'm supporting her as a business owner. I could just find some theater somewhere and just try to do the reading there. But I went to this place, wonderful, wonderful place down there near Grant Park and Zoo, Atlanta. Wonderful environment, enough parking, all of that kind of things that Atlantans think about. So you go in there, you're going to not only get the great food right next to it, but you're going to have a space and you're going to hear a great piece of work. That's what I'm talking about with business owners, like helping each other out for real. That's it. So it's not going to be in a great theater. People just going to say, "Oh, yeah, well, it's just not a theater." No, but her food is fantastic. The place right next to it is beautiful. It's a wonderful setup. It's going to look nice. It's going to fit 25 people. People will be able to walk by. That's what we're talking about, everyone. And I'm so thankful to her and for all of the businesses that are out there that are doing it. You are doing what we. That's just the part about the United States I dig. Is that we can take the stuff that we want to do and to take the freedom that we fought for and actually make it happen. And along the way, we create great things for our family, or great things for our community. That's what business is all about. So, for all of you out there, you see the crawl below. Donate to Kiana's Voice, Cash App at Kiana's Voice. You've got the QR code right up at the top there. Make sure that you do this. It's going to be such a wonderful year for you and for us to make sure that we're doing the right thing by people one person at a time. So, David, any closing comments on this wonderful kickoff session for season 2 of Surviving Business?
Closing comment. Big thing that I want to tell everyone. I'm not about to announce like that I'm having another kid or something. What I would like to say is, to enjoy tomorrow for all the fathers. It'll be Father's Day, whether if you're white, black, orange, whatever. But for our people, let's do something special for Juneteenth. Let's all make sure that we do patronize at least 2 black businesses, because one wouldn't be enough. If you just went to one, that just wouldn't be enough. We wouldn't be making a dent. And the reason why I say two is because this is the second year that we're observing it, right?
For real.
So if we can set a trend, and this year we do two, guess what I'm thinking we should do next year?
Oh, that's right.
Probably do three, right? And we do four, and if we can continue to do that, you know, at some point we probably have to stop, right? We get to like 100, you're like, yo, what the hell? I'm spending my entire paycheck on one day, but 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 if we can continue to do that for even for 5 years, we get to the 5 year anniversary, and at the 5 year anniversary, you can go back and you can look at all the businesses that you want to go and see, and technically, if you did the one, you did the two, because last year we didn't have this call. You did the two, you did three, you did four, and then you did five. You do the math. You've done close to 20 businesses. Not quite 20, but close to like 15 businesses. And you can look back and you can see what's the success of those businesses. Now, I'm not saying that you can't repeat the same business year after year, but it'd be nice if you did something new.
Yeah.
So,
I found, yeah, you made me think about something. I know we're closing out, but there's an app. I think this was created by a celebrity. I forget his name, but it's called Black Wall Street, and I think it'll have. From I downloaded it, and it's got lots of businesses that have joined it, and so it uses some technology. So, for example, I know of Plaid. Plaid is the only process that I would ever tell people that's okay to connect to your bank account. It uses a secure platform supported by the government. So when you put your information in there, it is not going to be compromised. Plaid is the best. And you see this little piece here that they put in there. I think that this is such a great little blurb there. And when you think about supporting a business, it's not really only about the business, it's about the wealth of our people. Our wealth was stripped. We never got that 40 acres and a mule. And so we've got to continue to fight together to make sure that we're getting and supporting each other. We just are.
And I know we're closing, but I just can't let something like this pass without mentioning, the way that us as a community, a lot of times we idolize the tokens, right? So you're like, oh man, we only got 1%, but we got how many billionaires, right? So we got like 3 billionaires that they could count. Well, I don't know, it might be more.
Prob-
Jay Z and
Probably like probably five, maybe five, six.
yeah, and now
Serena, Jay Z, LeBron. Who's the other ones you said?
um, Nas,
No,
uh, I don't, Dr. Dre. I think he actually got it now.
Dr. Dre. He's been around. He's got been a billion for a while. But putting that in perspective, if I recall, there's like I don't know, like 100 billionaires in the United States of America. Like it's some
Exactly.
massive amount of number of
Mhm.
people.
And then and then we can look at our athletes and say like, yeah, they get the millions, right? But we have to think of wealth, right? So they're at a point where yeah, they can start accumulating wealth, but we talk about wealth just as far as you know what you have, and what your family has, and what your neighbor has, and what the people that you regularly speak to, what they have, right? We've come a long way as far as gaining knowledge and gaining the ability, gaining access. you know there's of course there's still ways to go, but part of that way is figuring out how we're going to obtain greater wealth, and one of those is going to be by patronizing our businesses.
Yeah. So going back to our comment, finding 10,000 people who love your business or your service is important. That is the goal. Finding those people and making sure that when you give them such unbelievable service that they love you, like the example that we've shared today. I'm so excited to be back in season 2 of Surviving Business. For those of you who are out there, know that we've got some great sessions coming up, in July, August, September, October, all leading up to Kiana's Voice in November. So it's going to be a phenomenal time for us. Me personally, I'm gonna do sort of what David was talking about, finding a way to support a black business using we got so much access to resources. So if I want to buy something today, who am I buying it from? Just ask yourself that question. Am I buying it from someone who's helping our community or helping my thing, or am I just trying to do what I do normally? Just think about that. So this is Surviving Business. Thank you for those who've joined. We've had some people in the background who have put in some comments. For those of you who've given your donations, we appreciate it. We've got a few people who've moved from bronze to gold to silver. I mean, from silver, bronze, silver, gold, and now into the diamond area in regards to donations. So we really appreciate them all. So this is Winston with Surviving Business. We will talk to you again